Unlimited. Blade works!
Okay, so you want to get into the Fate series. Do you really want to get into it? Now, trying to understand the Fate series, it's kind of like trying to understand calculus. You don't. It's really confusing. But I'm gonna break it down in like the simplest way possible. At least the way I know. Now, there might be a few discrepancies because I know people recommend the Fate series a certain way. Do this way, do this way. Well, I'm just gonna recommend like the way I started. People might disagree, but with it being the Fate anniversary, the 20th anniversary, just a few days ago, and with today being Ren Tosuka's birthday, best girl. Although I'm a bit more obsessed with Saber. Well, I have a Saber tattoo right here. I got a Saber shirt. Let me show you my Saber shrine. Saber, more Saber, Ren. Okay, now trying to understand the Fate series is a bit complicated, not gonna lie. It is like trying to understand calculus. You may get the knowledge of it, you may understand some grasp of it, but at the end of the day, trying to piece it all together is like trying to put a puzzle. It's pretty confusing when you have no idea what the puzzle is actually supposed to look like. Because the Fate series, if you ask any Fate fan, like they're either hardcore or they're like beginner and they have no clue exactly what they're talking about. Because I'm not the biggest expert in Fate. I only know so much what I try to recommend people, but they're essentially like the three main Fate. Like, I'll disregard the Dean 2000 whatever Fate Stay Night adaptation because it's kind of mid. Not gonna lie, it's kind of mid. It's kind of mid. You got Fate Zero, which follows the story of Kiritsugu and Saber, which to me is arguably one of my favorite Fate stories. You got Fate Unlimited Blade Work, which is probably the most popular one, where people tend to find out who Rin is, they find out who Archer is, they find out about Emiya, and then you got the Fate Heaven's Feel route. Now, to watch the watch order for Fate, you definitely don't really start off with Heaven's Feel because that's a bit after the first two, but at the same time, not really. So the way I started off was with Fate Zero, even though you're not supposed to because it's a prequel to Unlimited Blade Works, but one spoils the other spoils another. You get what I mean? It's pretty confusing generally trying to understand it. But the way I started off is with Fate Zero because it's a prequel to Unlimited Blade Works. You get to see pre-Ren, pre-Shiro, what happens before their life, because Fate Zero takes 10 years before the events of Unlimited Blade Works, and it follows the story of Emiya's father, Kiritsugu Emiya, which to me, he's probably one of the more compelling protagonist in all of Fate. I really like him solely for the fact that he uses guns. He doesn't really use traditional magecraft like the other sorcerers, like the other magicians in this world. He's known as the magician killer, the sorcerer killer, whatever you want to call him. He's kind of like Toji from Jujutsu, like he goes around killing sorcerers, blah blah blah. He's a pretty cool character. Now his dynamic with Saber, like throughout the story, is pretty fascinating because they're kind of like the Daredevil and Punisher in that story where one mirrors the other. Murder is good, violence is bad, yada yada, and it ultimately ends in a tragic way for both of them, which I really don't want to spoil because it's a really good series. It's like 25 episodes. It's 100% worth watching. Now, Unlimited Blade Works, you might be a bit more familiar with this because it follows the story of Rin Tosuka and Emiya Shiro Emiya. It's pretty interesting. You get Archer in it, and then you get the explanation of multiple timelines, and it gets a little bit confusing, and then you get Best Boy Gilgamesh. It's a really interesting story. It's by far one of the more popular Fate adaptations of the story because it's the Unlimited Blade Works route, and then you got the Heaven's Feel route, which essentially follows Sakura Amato and her story. Now, I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but Sakura Amato is the biological sister of Ren Tosuka. They were split at birth, and she was handed over to the Mato family. She has a really tragic backstory, and a bunch of stuff happens that I don't really feel comfortable saying because it's a pretty dark story. It is a pretty dark story. And now that's probably one of the more darker versions of Fate just because of the way it explains itself, the way like it dives deep. Now, the Fate series was based off the visual novel, the 2004 visual novel, or 2002, can't remember, Fate Stay Night, which essentially follows all of these storylines. But think about it like this. These are 4 separate routes. Each route is kind of like a video game. Well, the visual novel is a video game technically. So you you know how in video games, like depending on the choices you make, you end up in a certain situation, certain ending. Yeah, that's essentially like the Heaven's Feel route. That's essentially the Unlimited Blade Works route. That's essentially the 2006 whatever Fate Stay Night route. Like, you get Saber ending, you got the Rin ending, which to me is my favorite. Then you got the Sakura ending, which I don't like. Warm Girl, she's ugh. And then after that, you got kind of the spin-offs. You got Fate Apothecary, you got Fate Grand Order, you got Fate Redline, you got Fate Red. You got so many Fate variations, which is really hard to follow. Like, trying to get into it, I would say it's pretty easy generally. Like, you can either start off with Unlimited Blade Works, which is totally cool. That's where generally everyone likes to start off with. Or you can be like kind of edgy and start off with Fate Zero, because to me that's why I start off. Yes, I know people might argue, but Fate Zero is, to me, the best way to start off, because it's a bit more mature. If you like that, Unlimited Blade Works kind of simplifies it a bit more, but that's just me. Now, as far as the other spin-offs go, it doesn't really matter which way you watch them, because they're not necessarily important to the main three: Heaven's Feel, Zero, Unlimited Blade Works. They do make slight references, but keep in mind, there's a bunch of video games, there's a bunch of projects, there's a bunch of novels that kind of tie in correlate, which kind of gets confusing, kind of gets not. There's a lot of stuff involved in this series that it's kind of hard. Multiple timelines, all this stuff that kind of gives you a headache just trying to understand it. Now, one of the main things I like about Fate is the fact that all the characters in Fate, they're essentially gender bent characters of historical archetypes, such as Michelangelo, like the famous Renaissance artist. He's turned into a girl and like she looks really hot. You got King Arthur, who's Saber Artoria Pendragon, and there's like multiple versions of her. You got Emperor Nero as Saber Nero, I think that's her name. You got like so many versions. Or you got Okita Saber, a Saber who was in the Japan Meiji era. You got a bunch of versions of like many of these similar characters, such as Ren. You got Erishka, you got Ishtar. Like, they're really similar characters. Now, the designs in Fate, they're all really cool. And then you got more versions of Emiya. Like, you got Maramusa, you got a few other ones I can't really name off the top of my head, but you get what I'm saying. There's a lot of cool stories. There's also like some weird stuff involved, such as in Fate Apothecary, where you got Mordred, who's the son of Saber, but she was impregnated by this mage, even though she's a girl. I don't know. It's really confusing. Now, that's just my take on the Fate series. Like, trying to understand it, like I said, it's kind of confusing. If you want to explore more Fate, if you really want to understand it, one of my friends, he actually has a channel where he like explores the Fate series a bit more. He's more knowledgeable in that. I highly recommend you go check that out, because his opinions might differ from me. This is just like my basic understanding of trying to get you guys to understand the Fate series. It's really confusing, but at the end of the day, it's pretty entertaining. If you like anime girls, if you like big battles, if you like flashy animation, if you like a good story, Fate is something for you. If you want to go broke, I recommend go play the video game Fate FGO. Download it right now. This is not sponsored. Go download it if you really want to go broke. But yeah, that's just my take on trying to understand the Fate series. You really can't. You really cannot. But if you want to, go give it a shot. Anyways, I'll catch you guys on my next video. And who's your favorite Fate character? Oh, that gets so confusing. Anyways, bye.